Hi, I'm Andy Findlay, and today you join me at Makings Fishery, where I'm going to show you how to bag up on the method feeder. So you joined me today on one of my favourite venues, which is Makings Fishery on phase 1, and I've sat myself down on a lovely peg on the A bank, A11 as it is now. It's been repegged. It used to be the A9 for the lads who used to fish it years ago. This is all going to be about fishing the method, and more so the finer points of the method feeder, which I've learned over the years that keeps me in the top 3 in all the matches I fish on this phase, especially this lake, up to present day. This lake holds many brilliant memories to me because I've been fishing this lake for possibly the last 30 years near on. I've seen the method feeder develop from what it used to be, a crude sort of, well, the M-stat feeder, like a ball of ground bait around it. I came along and refined it and made it half the size and made it flat, and that's what all the anglers use today. So I say I'm going to discuss more, rather than you watch me just chuck out to the island and real fishing all day, which can be a bit boring. Not that I'm going to say I'm going to be able to do that. Rather than that, I'm going to talk about and hopefully demonstrate the finer points that I've learned over the years, going right back from the start of the baits I use, the preparation. I'm going to talk quite a lot about the mould, because I see a lot of anglers not using that properly. And then I'll go on to the rod and reel, the main line I use, not missing out the feeders of course. And through the video I'll be mentioning the casting, because all what I've just said about the different things to do with method fishing, nothing replaces really good casting, consistent casting. The good thing about this lake, and it's the perfect venue to do a video like this, is it's got 2 islands running parallel to each bank. There's the A and the B bank, and normally the A bank is the most consistent. But recent weeks, the wind's like it is today, it's blowing more up to the left-hand end of the lake as we sit on the lake here. And it's moved a lot of the fish out of the bowl. The lads who fish this lake a lot will know that the best pegs are Tumarite, where it's quite wide. So I think we've got a good chance of catching here. So what I was saying about the 2 islands running down the middle of the lake, just about every peg on this lake has a chuck to the island, so it's perfect for learning about the method feeder. And throughout the video I'll be explaining the casting. You know, you need to be accurate right through the day. I expect the fishing will be quite hard here early on, and it'll get better in the day. So having said all that, I've got all my tackle set up ready, but I've not prepared my bait yet. So I'll kneel down on my hands and knees on the grass behind me and get some bait out. Over the years, I've put many different mixes on my method feeder. A long time ago, before pellets were ever known to put on a method feeder, it all used to be ground bait. And the best mix I used to use in them days was simply a ground pellet mixed with water to form like a really heavy inner mix, but heavy because I put a lot of water in it. And for years that was the best mix. I won countless matches down on this lake and other venues. And at this point I will explain that this mix doesn't just work at Makins, it'll work on any Midlands venue, all the venues I go to. But then 2mm pellets come onto the market, and I found it out by accident one day. I was fishing at Boddington of all places, and the fishing was that good that I'd run out of ground bait about halfway through the match. And all I'd left in my bait bucket was some 2mm pellets. We've all seen them and used them up to this present day. So what I hastily done, just because I had to carry on with the match, I was doing really well in the match, I thought I'd soak down some pellets, and so they got sticking. I started putting them on my feeder, and all of a sudden my catch rate improved, and I put it down to the fact that I'd run out of ground bait and started putting 2mm pellets on my feeder. It was miles better, and from then on I've never looked back. And that's one reason why you never see me using ground bait on a method feeder again, because as the years gone by I now understand why pellets are better on a method feeder than ground bait. Every time you cast the feeder into the lake and you've reeled back with a fish on, or perhaps you've not caught a fish, you've left that feeder full of pellets on the bottom of the lake up to an island or wherever you're fishing, and they just lay there until they get eaten, and then in turn draw fish into your peg the more you cast in. Whereas if you were still using ground bait as we used to in the old days, ground bait, when it's broken up and you've retrieved your feeder in, it's just a carpet of smell really. There's a few particles there, but it just gets towed away with the drift or any tow that's in the lake, and there's nothing there that the carp can come and settle on. So before I left the house this morning, I put a bag of pellets in my bucket and levelled them with water. If you go back on my previous videos of last year, I've talked about this in depth, but there is a change with this mix. I've been using it through the colder months and into the spring. I've been catching loads of fish on it, and I think it's the best mix I've been using so far. What I need to mention at this point is anywhere we go that isn't fishery pellets only, I use my good old Thin Perfect pellets in the 2mm size. Luckily, although Makins is a fishery only pellet, I won't be using these today because of that reason. These fishery pellet, Makins fishery pellets, soak up near on identical to my Thin Perfect pellets. So the preparation is exactly the same as what you'd use for my Thin Perfect pellets as it is for these. As I say, before I left the house today, I tipped a bag of these into my bucket. You always need a few of these in your stash at home so that you can do this. It's no good turning up at the fishery unless you get here really early and buy pellets, so you're not going to have time to prepare. And this is really important. You do need to give the pellets time to absorb all the water so that they've gone soft right through. So here they are. What I've done, just put the towel on to stop them drying out, but I levelled these with water before I left the house, and you can see they've they've absorbed all the water up, they've set slightly in the bucket, but I can take them in my fingers and squash them to a paste, and if I carried on moulding them, they'd form a ball that would never break up, and that's important. But I take that one step further. I see a lot of anglers when they go around before the draw, before the start of the match or after, and they'll ask me, what do you think to my pellets on? Are these all right for the method? And most of the time, they're too dry. And these are bordering on too dry, to be fair, but a rough guide is to level them with water, use the water out of my koi pond to pre-soak them before I leave the house. But I've got no problem with putting tap water in. I've caught massive bags of fish when I've prepared my pellets with tap water as well. So that isn't a, you know, don't think that's a problem. In that mid-era of the method feeder years, where after I'd come out with the flat method design, these would have been fine then to put on the method feeder using the mould, but finding I have to squeeze them on, you know, sometimes hunch over the mould and with my two thumbs or my mic to squash them on the feeder so they stick properly. So what I found out quite a few years ago now, I took it up to Sonu Baits once I found out that to make them less spongy and make them slightly stickier, which I think is important, I discovered this, it's a serial binder, and Sonu Baits market it as a ground bait and pellet binder. It's not that expensive. It comes in a 900 gram bag, but I purposely chose a bag that has been kicking about in my bucket for a couple of months now to prove that you don't need a lot of it, and it can go a long way. So this is the perfect time to add this binder to the pellets. I've already soaked them and they need just a bit more water before I add this. Pour it's around about an egg cupful of binder to the pellets, and then you need to work it in, and by feel I know that, you know, when it's going to be right. So what I need to do before I add that is just, as I say, these have gone a little bit dry, and I think that is the most common mistake with anglers using pellets on a method feeder, is that the pellets are too dry and you're having to overwork the mould, you know, to really cram them on the feeder so they don't fall off on the cast, and ensure that they land on the bottom of the lake intact on your feeder. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit more water, not too much, probably half an egg cupful, no more than that. And then I'm going to give them a swish around just to coat them in water so they feel a bit wet on the surface, which you've done there. They're still, you know, quite rubbery and bouncy if you put them on the feeder, which isn't that good. And this is only something I've found in recent months. So now's the time to add the binder, and I recommend something like an egg cupful to a bag full of pellets. Something like that. You don't want to put a lot more in than that, else it can get too sticky. So once you've put that in, what you want to be doing is just evenly distribute it around the pellets. Once it's like that, get in with your two hands and start forming balls. You can already see, you know, how much stickier they were than before I added it. And try and, you know, just keep a minute or so, it doesn't take long. Every time you form a ball, just break it up again, which it should do. It just comes to natural pellets. The binder more or less disappears in between the pellets. So in effect, you are just putting pellets on your method feeder, which I've already explained the reason for that. You're baiting up your area. Every time you come back, with a fish or not, you're leaving pellets behind for the fish to move on to. The way I suspect the lake will fish today, there's been a lot of spawning activity in the last few days rather, and I think the fish are a bit worn out from it, and I think it's going to be a while before they start feeding properly here today. So later on in the day, I think, you know, if I keep casting and building my peg in the early stages, then pellets are going to be there ready for the fish to move on them, and hopefully I'll start bagging up. So I've been fishing for about an hour or so now, and it's proving difficult, to be honest. I'm on a good peg here, but I'm suspecting the previous days to us being here, the fish have been going mad spawning, and I'm sure I'm going to catch later on in the day. But you know, I'm getting lots of indications on the tip, but it's not going around properly. I've had, what I've had in an hour, I've had two carp in the skimmer, and it's just gone round with, I think, a bit bigger fish. But this is the thing with this method fishing. I see a lot of anglers like chuck out at the start, give it 2 or 3 casts, and then it's not long before they're changing and swapping around when the fish aren't really ready to feed anyway. But with keep continuous casting and building that bed of pellets over by the island, when the fish are ready, then they'll come onto it. And you know, the last couple of hours of the match, when a lot of the anglers are gone on the pole by then, you can get, you know, you can get their fish into your peg. Them fish that are over at the island, they just come to you because you're the only one who's fishing over there. I've just seen this fish, it looks like a decent ghoster. There's lots of ghosties in this lake, but sometimes really hard to catch. Or the months of the year dictate when the really big fish come out. But oh, that even looks like a koi carp, that does. Yeah, don't know if anyone's into koi keeping. I really am. And I've just seen that fish there. I recognise it from last year. I caught it last year, I think, if it's the same one. But there's a type of koi called a matsuba, and it looks really like that. I really want to get this in, just to show the camera. Normally they fight harder than the normal mirrors and commons, so I'm going to take my time with this. The rod's looking superb as always. What a bend that is. Can hear the drag going there probably. I say they do fight a bit harder than the normal mirrors and commons. But just in case it's hooked lightly, I'm going to take my time and try and get this out. It's going to be a lovely fish for the feature. It's not massive, but it's a decent fish. This ghost is up to nearly 20 pounds in this lake, but as I said, normally it's July, August time when they start showing up. That's going to be a lovely fish, this is. It's orange. Won't be the quality to take home to put in my koi pond, but because most of the fish quite old in this lake and they've got a few battle scars on them, but it's going to be a great fish for the video. Can feel the elastic doing the job through the stem of the feeder. Today I'm using a elasticated stem that's interchangeable with the ICS system, because going back through the years, all my homemade jobbies, I made them elasticated because that was the thing at the time, that when the method was invented, it was made with elastic, which helps cushion the fish. And it's got other advantages as well. I think it helps hook the fish because it is a fixed rig. That's the only downside of it. If you get problems with your main line breaking, then unfortunately the fish is tethered only for a short while. They'll get rid of it before long. Today I'm using the not mentioned it's a Superior X 11-foot feeder, ideal rod for this sort of range or a bit further. I'm only chucking about 35 yards here, and it's teamed up with a 320 size centrist reel with a £6 sinking feeder mono, which is my favourite feeder line. You really don't need to experiment with other lines once you've used this. For many years now I've been using this, and it's even stronger than it stays, and the knot strength's brilliant. You see what I mean about these fish fight harder than the mirrors and commons? I think it's that ghosty streak they've got in them. It's a nice orange colour looking at it in the murky water. That's his orange tail up. Won't be much longer now. Yeah, I've caught this fish more than a few times over the years. Remember, I've been fishing here, well, best part of 30 years, so you get to see the same fish now and again. Shows that it doesn't really do them any harm catching them. Look at that, what a lovely fish. Come on. Gotcha. Oh, that's a lovely fish. It's a good 8 to 9 pound. Really brightens up one's day catching a fish like that. That will never come off. It's a disgorger job. Never coming out that hook. Only a size 18 kkh. Never ever coming out. So I just hold it up for the camera. Video fish this. Not in perfect condition, but that's really, it's not even a ghosty, it's a koi carp, that is. I really don't want to damage him or risk a dropping him. I'm holding my net under him, so just in case it flicks, he's still got a bit of life in it. Look at that. What a lovely fish. Let's get him in the keep net. Shame to put him in the keep net even, that. Treat him really carefully. Great stuff. So now that I've got that beautiful fishing, I'll take a few moments to talk about my tackle setup. Hopefully you're all familiar with the ICS system, Jura flat methods. I think it's the best method feeder on the market, up to date, I really do. I've used them since they come out. They've been out a long time now, many years, probably 6 or 7, even longer than that. There's a few sizes in the range. Once sort of June comes on this lake, or anywhere in particular where the fish are a good size like that koi I've just caught, I move up to the large size, but we're using the small today because although the water's warmed up, the fish still aren't really feeding like they are later in the year. Most of the time when I'm doing videos with the method, I use an inline version because, to be fair, most of the venues, that's the only type of setup that's allowed. But here at Makins, anything goes really. Elasticated and fixed rigs are allowed. And I don't know if you heard me say when I was playing that lovely koi, that the method, when it was invented, was elasticated. And all my original homemade designs, I made them elasticated, believing that the elastic hooks a fish. And obviously, I'm sure that you lose less fish because the elastic shock absorbers stops the hook pulling out. So you can see ICS means interchangeable system, and they're very easy to take apart. You just take the tail rubber off and the feeder slips out and you're left with a stem, and you can just interchange to different size feeders. You can see I've got different size feeders in my tray. I dedicate one tray of my drawer to my feeders and my moulds, and I can just, there's the large size, and I can just slip that on over the stem. It's really easy when you're not talking, do it without looking. Push that all the way up, and then you really do need to put the tail rubber back on, because that's what really keeps the feeder on the stem. If you was to use it without there, then there's possibility you could lose the feeder by it slipping off the stem. This is something that a lot of you might not know of, is the way of attach the feeder to the main line, of not actually using a snap link swivel, which is another way of attaching this type of feeder, because it's elasticated stem. So what I've done, if I can explain it rather than demonstrate it, is the end of my reel line, I've got a 3-inch loop, 3 or 4-inch loop, don't really matter, but the tag end I've left it longer, and that's slightly longer than the tail rubber, so that when you come to rig the thing up, you can thread the tag end through the nose cone, the tail rubber, and pull the whole loop through as well. And then all I do is pass it through the hole in the stem and lasso it to the stem by passing the loop through the back end of the feeder and forming a lasso that fixes it onto the stem. And then all you do then is just slip the tail rubber over, pull the stem up tight, and then you've got the perfect setup. But I'm not using that size feeder. I'm using a small today, because I've said earlier, the fish aren't really having it yet, especially today after they've been spawning. So you can see I've just pulled that feeder off there, and I'm going to slip back on the 30 gram. This is worth mentioning. To start from, there's a mini series now as well, the ICM, and the range from I think 10 gram all the way up to 60 gram, these feeders. So with that one stem, you can put any weight and size of feeder on that stem without breaking the whole rig down. But because I'm only casting about 35 yards here on peg A11 on the A bank of Lake 2, you never need that much weight to get there. You get there easily with 15 gram, but that's not the reason I'm using 30 gram. You can see today, and this is really important, we've got a really stiff breeze blowing from right to left. And if I was to try and cast a 15 gram out there, I'd easily get there, but there'd be a big bow in the line out of the water, and as soon as the feeder touches down, the wind's just going to catch hold of the line and drag the feeder off the bank. So using a heavy feeder, you can probably cast it a bit harder, get your rod back here, get ready for it to hit the clip, and at that moment it hits the clip, put your rod forward, and it'll straighten the line out, and your feeder will land right next to the rail that I'm aiming at, and carry on going under. So you'll be really tight to the island because you've got extra weight in your feeder. And I'm going to try and keep bringing up this casting technique through the day, because even though I've mentioned how good the feeders are and we've been through the bait prep, nothing substitutes for consistently, spot on casting. You get all your casting together, leaving them pellets behind, you'll get enough fish there, get competitiveness with the fish, and you'll get bites quicker. So I'm going to slide this back on, bait up and chuck it out again. It's really important, as you've cast out, you see the feeder land after pulling your rod forward like I've just explained, is to get your your rod straight on your rest. You can see it's not pointing quite at the feeder, it's slightly to the right because the wind's coming from right to left. And what that does, it gets the line under the surface, below the surface, so there's no wind or drag on the line. And then it's just a case of bringing the rod up, not even touch my reel, because I'm using that length of the line. It's like a tape measure. I've mentioned this in other videos. Once you start reeling a bit of line in to tighten up and all that, it'll go fish straight away. What I was saying is, once you start winding down to your feeder after it's settled, then you're altering the length of the line. That length of the line should be a straight line to your fishing position. And I see so many anglers after the cast up, they just do a few turns on the reel and put the rod down, you know, to tighten up, and I don't do that because I'm using the full length of line when I'm casting tight to an island. And if there's any slack or a bow in the line, then obviously that's as much as you are off the bank, which isn't no good. You've got to be, you know, a nice tight line to the island every time, keeps the feeder where it should be. If it was a decent fish, this does again. You're just beginning to wake up now. I mentioned that because they've been spawning, it's going to be a slow start, but starting to come on the feed. It's kited off to the right, so I've brought my rod to the left and he's slowly coming towards me now. I think it's important, I mean, most of us know how to play fish, and I think you can judge an angler on his ability by how they play a fish. But what I do, I like to keep the rod low, and that way, you know, bending the rod, and the fish will just, after it's had its mad first run, it'll just slowly come back to you. And it's only when it's within netting range you want to be lifting your rod to get it up near the surface, ready for the landing net. What sort of carp is this? Oh, it's a mirror carp this time. It's good size. It's a great thing about this lake, it's got all types of carp in it. There's crucians, mirrors, commons, koi, we've just seen. All different colours of ghost carp. There's some right big old mirror carp, you know, up to £20. Some of them look a bit worse for wear because a lot of the fish in this lake are as low as a lake. I remember Bill Makin stocking it in the late 80s, early 90s, and they all went in at stockfish, you know, nothing bigger than £1. There's been lots of fish introduced as well as that over the years with the different owners that the fisheries had, but still the main stamp of fish you catch on this lake are the old fish, you know, the really old fish. I think they've just built up the immune system they need because they've lived in this lake for so long and they're nearly bomb proof. You know, we do our best to take care when we've caught them with these fine mesh landing nets. Really important piece of kit that. The bigger the mesh in the landing net, the more chance of damaging the fish's fins. They get caught in the mesh. So that's another reason why I use a fine mesh landing net. For all my fishing, not just my method fishing. I mean, another main advantage is that the quick stops don't get stuck in it. Well, there's a nice fish, about £7 or £8. Bottom lip, classic method feeder hooking position. And again, an old fish that, but very welcome, still in good nick. The fish even feel warm today, guys. It's cold wind today, to be honest, but because we've had some warm weather leading up to today, the fish even feel warm. And there we go again, straight round. So they're definitely beginning to wake up now. That's 3 fish, starting with that lovely koi on the bounce. Every fish I've hooked today for some reason has gone to me right. That all, most of the time, suggests to me that that's the way they come into the peg from. So when they're hooked, they go back that way. Not always, but I'd have said with the direction of the wind today, most of the fish would be down this left-hand end of the lake, but not on the reasoning of the fish going to the right. Thought it quite a big fish then, how it powered off, but it's coming towards me quite easily now. Always play fish with the drag. These centrish reels got a lovely smooth drag. Probably hear that going there. It's automatic fishing. You know, you don't have to struggle to back wind to follow the fish. Just let the reel do it. Just keep that pressure on the fish all the time without trying to bully it. The rod's doing everything, just like the elastic in the pole. Set quite hard, the drag, you know, without bullying the fish, so still applying plenty of pressure. Fighting a bit harder, only a small fish this time, but you can see what I mean by not being in a rush to come off the method if you're not catching early on. You know, I've had nearly 20 pound in 3 fish in 3 casts from nowhere really, so just waiting for the fish to get confident, move on your bait, start feeding properly. Another disgorger in the side of the mouth this time. No chance of ever coming out. Quite difficult with the aid of a disgorger. So what's really important with method fishing is using the mould properly. The mould is made so that the feeder fits in it, obviously. But you can still make a mess of it. And all this really stems back to the bait preparation part of the video, where I use the binder, the magic binder, because it just makes the job so much easier. And what this is, again, I've done it in previous videos, but it's good to have a recap. But it's going to be easier today because previous videos I've done it in, I've not been using the binder. And you find yourself squeezing it harder because the pellets end up spongier without the binder, which isn't what you want. So the first stage then is to, if you're right-handed, I hold the feeder in my left hand and also the mould in my left hand as I make it up, a bit like that. So the first stage is to cover the red insert, the actual part of the mould that moves, with, and then with pellets, and just put your thumb on them to compress them. I've said this a few times as well. What you want really is a little feeder and a lot of bait, not the other way around. So always, don't matter what size of feeder you're using for your given conditions, try and get as much pellets on your feeder as possible. So I've put them in there and I've compressed them, and what that does is make room for more bait. And now it's really important, I feel, to get your single expander pellet right in the middle of the mould, because then it will miss the bars of the feeder, so you're not going to crush it. And then really pile your pellets on top of that and make a big mound like that. And then because I'm holding it, the mould and the feeder in one hand, I can just take the mould with me right hand now and upend the feeder, trapping that big mound of pellet. And then this, because we've got binder in it, that's all you need to do. Because it's a sticky mix now, you know, I wouldn't advise squeezing it much tighter than that unless you're fishing in really deep water. And then all you do then, I've done this many times before, is rather than try and pull the feeder out of the mould, never do that, turn it upside down and keep pressing the button. It drops out every time, and that way you've not damaged the seal round the bait, round the feeder, so it's not going to fall off, you know, on the splash or the force of the cast. It'll land on the bottom of the lake and start to gradually peel away off the feeder and expose your expander pellet. So now I'll try and get out and catch another fish. Wow, so a brilliant cast, even though I say it myself, and it's ripped up the lake into the bay on 13A. Even had to unclip. So what I've got to do next cast, though saying that, I think it's a good idea, because I've had such a good day, still buzzing about that koi carp I caught. We'll probably make this the last fish, since I had to unclip for it. Had to be really quick, it just suddenly bolted to the right, and if it not unclipped, there's a good chance it's straight and milk out there. And again, it's gone to me right, strangely enough, like every other fish has. But yeah, great days fishing again at Makins on the method. I hope you've learnt, again, some of the finer things, the things that really make a difference. You know, especially about the binder. Keeps the mix together, and that release off the feeder once it's been in the lake for a couple of minutes or so, just revealing the hook bait. I swear most of the time when you get a bite on the method, that's what's happened. Your bait's just come off, just comes visible as the fish is feeding on it, and it takes it with no caution. It's come in the side a bit. There's not many snags in this lake, so I'm not worried about that. It's just coming steadily towards me now. But this fish could have broke me, or at best bent me hook open without me unclipping. So he's nearly just about in front of me now. I'm raising my rod. Yeah, not that big a fish, just took off. Nice fish to end on, all the same. Different coloured mirror carp, well, nearly a leather carp, not got many scales on it. Safely in the net. So, 6 pounder. So great fish to end on, nice chunky leather carp that, it's hardly got any scales on it. Still full of life. Calm down. What about that? Great fish to end on. So I hope you've learnt plenty, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh, also, don't forget to like and subscribe to Preston Innovations YouTube channel. I'm still buzzing about that koi carp I caught.